I am Leon Wiles, president of 100 Black Men chapter of Upstate, South Carolina. It is my extreme pleasure to welcome you to this evening's town hall meeting entitled Higher Education in the Midst of the COVID-19 Pandemic. The purpose of this virtual town hall meeting is to discuss some of the important opportunities and options available to individuals today within higher education institutions, despite the significant challenges posed by the present pandemic. Additionally, relevant higher education statistics will be presented that will provide a useful contextual background. We are fortunate this evening to have a distinguished panel of higher education administrators and educators, along with both a high school student who is a college prospect and a current college student. These students will share their perspectives regarding higher education. Many of the choices and changes and innovations that institutions of higher learning have made to meet the new challenges presented by the COVID-19 pandemic will be discussed in some detail. Our panel will discuss the college admissions process, establish safety protocols, standardized testing adjustments, the quality of the educational experience in the wake of the pandemic, the value of higher education during the economic downtime, and many other pertinent topics. The student panelists will share their observations and expectations as it relates to their quest for fulfilling post-secondary educational experience. We look forward to an interesting and informative discussion. We will certainly welcome your questions and comments that are placed in the chat. Your questions will be addressed by the panelists at the conclusion of the panel presentation during the time set aside for Q&A. We will now post a list of instructions for you to place your questions and comments in the chat. Take a minute to review those. Thank you, Kim. We will begin our panel presentation with our lead panelist, Dr. Russell Booker, Executive Director of the Spartanburg Academic Movement, also known as SAM. He is also the co-founder of One Acorn Inspires and the former superintendent of Spartanburg School District 7. Dr. Booker.
Thank you, Leon. And you finished up and gave me 2 extra minutes, so I appreciate it. I do want to thank everyone for joining us this evening. I've had a chance to take a look at the participants. And first of all, I want to thank our board members from the Spartanburg Academic Movement for being a part of this important town hall meeting. We have members from higher ed. A number of our college presidents have joined us from our school districts. We have elected officials who have taken part in this important conversation tonight. Our faith community, I see my very own pastor logged on a little while ago, our business and industry. So this is timely, and having that wide representation is important because as we're working through the effects of COVID-19, it is going to take our entire community to move us forward. Leon, we're fortunate to be partnering with you all, and we thank you for making this town hall event a priority and for focusing your efforts on higher education. Right now we've got a pretty good idea of what's going on in our K-12 settings, but we have college students all around this country right now who we don't have our eyes on. So I think it's so important that as a community, we make sure we're not losing ground when it comes to this important part of our community. We know that our students in Spartanburg have a number of opportunities upon graduating from high school. Many of our students will choose to go right into the workforce and embark upon gainful employment. A number of our students will choose military, Greg, as an option, which is a great option for a number of our students. Greg's a West Point graduate here. We like to give each other a hard time. A number of our students will enter college. And when we talk about college, we want you to know we're talking about 2-year institutions. We're talking about 4-year institutions. We're talking about students going on to obtain those certifications that will advance their careers as well. So as you hear us talking about college, we don't want you to just think we're talking about 4-year institutions. But make no mistake about it, we know that a college degree, especially for our students who, are first generation students, is one of the first steps into what we refer to as economic mobility. And I want to share some data with you just to kind of get our conversation started so you can have an idea of where we are at this moment in Spartanburg County. So I want to begin by talking a little bit about where we are as a community right now. So this first slide that I'm sharing is data that we obtained from the American Community Survey. SAM was actually born out of a need to raise the level of educational attainment in our community. In 2009, you can see that as we looked at residents in Spartanburg who had a baccalaureate degree, who were 25 years old or older, we were at about 19.8%. And as you look at the trend, you can see that those numbers have improved. And that's something we're certainly proud of. And we don't want to lose ground as a result of what's taking place with COVID-19. But even at 24.5%, we know that for Spartanburg to be the community that will be there, that will attract all of our students back, we want to make sure we've got a diverse workforce in our community. So this is an area that we continue to focus on at the Spartanburg Academic Movement through One Spartanburg, Inc., and certainly working with our broader community. Just to give you some perspective with that number, in South Carolina, that number is 28.1%. And in the United States, that number is 32.1%. So that remains a priority for us at the Spartanburg Academic Movement. We have been very fortunate over the last couple of years to partner with our 7 school districts in them giving us access to National Student Clearinghouse data. National Student Clearinghouse, of course, Donnette could speak to this in her role in college admissions, but this is really the only data source nationally that we have to track student enrollment and student retention. There are some 3,600 colleges and universities who are a part of the National Student Clearinghouse, which encompasses 99% of the students who are enrolled in college. This data is allowing us to do a number of things. One, we can identify trends, and we want to talk about some of those trends in just a moment. 2, it allows us to track enrollment here in Spartanburg County with our students. We can track enrollment for up to 8 years for every child that graduates and enters college. It will allow us to target interventions in terms of retention and recruitment for students. And then it will open doors for further collaboration with colleges. So this has been a wonderful resource for us as we have looked to try to advance this work. So just a couple of things I want to share with you so you can have a sense of where we are at this moment. So what you're looking at, these are the students who have enrolled in college following their senior year in high school. So this is fall enrollment. And we have data right now tracking back to 2013. So what you're looking at essentially is what you see in gold. Those are the students in those respective classes who entered a 2-year college, whether that's a Spartanburg Community College or an SMC. What you see in purple, those are the percentage of students who entered a 4-year institution. And that top number, that is the total number of students, percentage-wise, who enrolled during those respective years. Now, I'll just be honest, we were very concerned with the class of 2020 because, as you all know, it was in March of last year when our state went into, a lockdown of sorts. So we were awfully concerned about what enrollment would look like. When our student tracker data came back late fall, we were pleased to see that we didn't lose a lot of ground overall. So from the class of 2020, about 60% of those students matriculated on to college immediately after high school. Now, I will say the good thing is, by March, most of the students have made their college decisions. So we think that, helped with that situation with this past class. You'll actually see that our students enrolling in a 4-year institution It's one of the highest numbers we've had thus far, 37%. But you will also see, looking from 2013 to 2020, that we have lost ground with students enrolling in our two-year institutions. And at 23% with this past class, that was our lowest percentage. And Dr. Mikota may be able to speak to the trends they're seeing at Spartanburg Community College. Now, if we take that data and we look a little closer in, and we can drill this data down even beyond this, I want you to kind of see what the demographics look like in our community right now with the class of 2020. So as we look at enrollment by race across Spartanburg County, you'll note that about 63% of our white students enrolled in college this past fall. About 56% of our African American students enrolled, and about 46% of our Latinx students enrolled. So you can see where the gaps are as you look at those demographics by race. Some of you may be surprised, many of you may not be, especially if you are in higher ed, but the percentage of female students to male students matriculating onto college, you can see that there's quite a gap there. So with this past class, 66% of our female students enrolled, as opposed to 53% of our male students. And then the data point that I think we need to be paying the most attention to is what's taking place with our students who come from disadvantaged backgrounds in terms of socioeconomic status versus non-disadvantaged. And you can see those numbers are stark. And again, as we talk about economic mobility, college enrollment is one of the best opportunities to put our students on that generational projection upwardly towards mobility. And again, we have data that we can drill down by race, Black males, white males, so on and so forth. The other piece of data I want to share, and I think our college presidents, they're looking right to their numbers right now, but as we look at all of those classes, what this data shows is where do the students in Spartanburg County go when they graduate? So of course you can see with this, Spartanburg Community College is certainly one of those top options. USC Upstate, Spartanburg Methodist, you see Converse, I know Dr. Newkirk is on, Wofford College. Dr. Warmack, you can see Claflin down there at number 23. So 70 students from Spartanburg we know are enrolled or have been enrolled at Claflin University. It's this kind of data that will allow us to, again, put in targeted interventions as we're working with our students. And then the last slide that I want to share before I turn it over to Donnette from USC Upstate is this particular slide. So FAFSA completion is such a critical component to our students matriculating on to college. And FAFSA stands for Free Application for Federal Student Aid. What you're looking here, we track FAFSA by student at every high school here at the Spartanburg Academic Movement. We've got those data agreements with our schools that allows us to look at these numbers in real time. FAFSA opened its process on October 1st. And what we've been tracking at SAM has been, the number of FAFSA application completions this year as compared to last year. So that top line that you see in teal, that represents the class of 2020. The line underneath that represents the class of 2021. So what you'll note as you look at this, and we're not sounding any alarms right now, but the number of FAFSA completions is down. As we look at this from a countywide perspective. And that's something we're watching because we know that 90% of the students who complete a FAFSA, they matriculate on to college. So I would challenge the community, whether it's our faith community or if you're a community member, as you're talking to students and you're asking them about their plans for next year, if you say, where are you going to college? Well, I'm looking at going to X. Ask them, have you completed your FAFSA? Because again, that's such an important piece to ensuring that they, have done those things they need to matriculate on to college. We do have some interventions at SAM that we're also instituting right now. And very quickly, I just want to talk about our Start Smart program. One of the things we've done at SAM is we look at student tracker data, as we look at FAFSA completion, this summer, we were able to take a look at students who completed the FAFSA forms. And in doing so, we noticed that there were some students who completed FAFSA, but they may not have matriculated on to college. And working with one school, we piloted this in one school this year. We wanted to know what could we do as an organization to support that. So there's a phenomenon that we refer to as summer melt. And summer melt is that time period between graduation and fall enrollment. And for a lot of students, they may fall by the wayside. So Megan Smith and our team here at SAM, we recruited coaches, and we paired coaches with 23 students who we identified at this particular high school. And it was a text messaging campaign between those coaches and the students. Those coaches would reach out to them, how's it going? Students would reach out if they had a question about applications or what does this mean? And we found it to be highly successful. So at the end of this summer, 19 of those 23 students enrolled in college. With that, and with some support from One Spartanburg, Inc., we were able to provide a $250 stipend to those students to work towards their books to make sure they had some of the resources needed to move forward. So this is an area that, as we think about COVID right now, as we think about, those students and the ones who may be out there, don't know how to get back into it because they've graduated from high school, they're not in college, and they're wondering, how do we get started? We want to be a resource for those students. So again, I think this information is very helpful. We need to use this data to drive our decisions. And with that being said, we're going to turn it over to someone who is living this every single day. So we're fortunate to have with us Donnette Steward. Donnette serves as the Vice President, the Vice Chancellor for Enrollment Services at USC Upstate. She has been at Upstate for over 30 years now. I told her I wouldn't share that, but she started when she was Jessica's age. So, she hadn't been there long. But we appreciate the work y'all are doing, Donnette, and at this time, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Russell. I appreciate that very much. And I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you. I don't think there's anything more important than that. And taking care of Spartanburg County students and beyond to make sure they have the opportunity to go to college and to have as normal of an experience as we can give them during this time. So I'm going to try to share my screen with you here so that we can see a PowerPoint that I've put together for this. Get to the, make sure you can see it. Let me try this again. It's not sharing what I had hoped to show it to you. Okay, I think now maybe you can see my screen. And so, okay, great, thank you. So I wanted to start with just some photos because I think this is a good example of the changes and how different things are here on campus. And I know as I look through the list, I see a lot of familiar faces who are facing these same kind of things every day as you take care of students and go to your place of work or business. And the top photo just shows what a regular recruitment visit would look like when you pack in 300 or 400 students to see the campus. And then in the bottom photo, you can see what it looks like today, where we limit the number of students who can come, and we're checking their temperature and making sure they wear a mask and trying to hold events that are responsible and take care of our students. The next one, kind of staying along those same lines, just to see what the students are kind of going through. At the top, you can see one of our School of Nursing photos, where the students are fully engaged with the faculty member. They're all sitting close to each other and having the chance to learn in the classroom. And then the bottom photo shows a class from this semester. So you see one student sitting there in this socially distanced classroom. The rest of the students have joined from online. And then finally, I wanted to share with you graduation. The top photo there is May of 2019, when 10,000 people were joining us for graduation and 800 people were graduating. And the bottom shows what the 800-person ceremony looks like this year. You know, the students were kind of huddled around their computer or huddled around the TV with just a few close friends to celebrate their graduation. And so it's certainly been a year of change, a year of challenge as we try to help our students and parents through these challenging times. I want to turn the attention just for a few minutes to just 5 of the college trends that we're all facing in 2021. And I know students and parents, probably even some who are on this call, who are giving advice to young people about going to college, and all of us who are working on the admissions side are looking for ways to evaluate applications. And so, you know, just those students' drive and their resilience and what they can tell us about their ability to adapt in these situations has become really important as we evaluate the students' applications and decide if they're a good fit for our campuses. Leon mentioned a few minutes ago about standardized test scores becoming optional, and that certainly has become the trend. There are over 1,600 colleges who are not requiring SAT or ACT for this year. We're one of those. Most of the others, publics around South Carolina, are not requiring the SAT or ACT. And I think that's a very good thing for our students and their parents, because College Board just released a survey to show that about 51% of first generation and low income students are not likely to have test scores available. So this is important to the students and their families, that we're looking at other factors to help us make our admissions decisions. And then there are big increases in applications to some very highly select schools. I think that's happening for a couple of reasons. One, that students thinking about the opportunity to attend some of their dream schools without the need for test scores is increasing those applications at some of those schools. And also, with all the travel restrictions and some of the schools not allowing in-person visits, the opportunity to see those visits, and for students who might not have the means to travel to places to see all the college campuses, are able now to do that virtually. And so that's opened up some opportunities that students might not have thought about before. We think we'll begin to see a return of international students as soon as the kind of pandemic wears off a little bit. We're not seeing as many travel restrictions. We think with some of the changes that are going on in the White House, we'll begin to see more international students back on our college campuses. And then the gap year. I was glad to see Russell's numbers that it looks like Spartanburg County did a good job of keeping our students, you know, in college and getting them enrolled right out of college. But many students did choose to take a gap year and take a little time off, and they're doing things in their community and taking some time away to get ready to plan to come back to college. And so we hope we'll see a lot of those in 2021. I've made just kind of a list here. I'm just going to go through these quickly to talk about a few of the things that are really impacting students as they're making decisions, and parents as they're trying to help them make decisions. Russell mentioned this to me just briefly when we first got on the call today. The opportunity to visit college campuses and to do campus tours looks very different today than it did a year and a half ago. So we're all trying to make those opportunities available many times. So I encourage you, if you're working with young people, to encourage them to call the schools of their choice, because many times tours are available. They just have to be scheduled. You have to make appointments. You can't drop in as much as you could in the past. You know, and when you go, you can expect that I think every school now is requiring that the students and parents wear masks. They do temperature checks. But it's something that's really an important part of the college choice selection. I was reading a survey just today that said that for the past 7 years, when they surveyed students about one of the top things they considered when trying to decide where to go to college, it was the feel of the campus. And all of us who work on college campuses know how important that is. And it's harder than ever to help the students understand who we are as a campus. It's a little bit harder to get that feel of the college campus from the Zoom meetings and team meetings than when they have the opportunity to come out and walk on the campus and go to your dining hall and meet with students in the classroom. But we don't want to give up. We want to keep pushing and keep giving students as many opportunities as they can to experience what college life will be like. Same thing with interviews with the admissions office and the financial aid team. I was glad to see on Russell's chart that we are thinking about FAFSA and talking to students and parents about financial aid, we want to partner with SAM to make sure that students and parents who need some assistance with their financial aid applications will get the assistance they need. It's going to be probably more important than ever to make sure our students and parents get the help they need with financial aid applications, because as we've started doing those with students, we realize that many families' financial situation has changed. So we can't really base their financial aid just on what happened, say, in 2019, because since then, someone may be working fewer hours or may not be able to work at all. And so they need financial aid professionals to help them make sure they're getting the maximum financial aid package that they're qualified for. So we want to be sure that we're helping those students through those kind of difficult pathways and making it easy for them to get through the process of filling out that FAFSA. Same thing with new student orientation. I think many of us are bringing orientation back this summer. Last year, we did it all online. This year, we want to be able to bring students back in small groups, because we think kicking off the college experience with orientation is really important. That many times is where the student makes their connection to their faculty member or to their advisor and meets new people and makes new friends. So we want to be sure that we give students that experience as much as is possible. Student housing was certainly impacted tremendously through this pandemic, because, before this year, we were worried about, roommate matching and, whether people bring too much to move in on move-in day. But now, we're worried with how many students we have in quarantine, how many students are in isolation, how do we get meals delivered? So it's a very different world in student housing. And I wanted to share this with you because after talking about all the things that I've just talked about, I'm sure this slide probably does not surprise you at all. If you look at the things students are dealing with when they come into the college campus, that stress, anxiety, loneliness is some of the things that our students are struggling with. We're trying to help students find ways to work around those things. Keeping up academically, where most of the courses are being delivered online, is something that students are needing our help and assistance and guidance to get through. And so this just gives a kind of a list and a breakdown of some of the things that students are struggling with and that we all want to help and encourage them through over this next year. These are just changes in college enrollment by sector. So you can see there that most of us in the year of 2020 did have some decreases in enrollment. And that was all across the United States as students were struggling with the COVID and, trying to make decisions about what to do and when to do and how to do it. Same thing happened with race and ethnicity across the board. You can see there what an impact that the COVID had on our students as they're making college choices. And then finally, this last slide here is just about, I know all of us were on this call today because we do care about students and we care about Spartanburg County and we care about making sure that our young people have great opportunities. And so I think, as I think about, well, what can we do? We really have to listen to them and try to understand what their anxieties are about and how we can help them work through those. Ask them questions and be available to answer their questions and help them find solutions. And then finally, just encourage and support them and help them realize that, hopefully we're coming to the end of this and they will be able to have a wonderful and rewarding college experience. So I appreciate your time very much. I'm going to turn this back over to Leon. Leon?
Donnette, one quick question before I turn to the next panelist. A number of colleges, including USC Upstate, previously offered a number of pre-college programs during the summer. Are those programs, do they still exist, or has the COVID-19 created a real challenge for having pre-college programs for younger students?
Thank you, Leon. That's a great question. And we did cancel all of those last summer. We are making plans for those now, trying to determine if it will be safe enough to bring those students back to campus. We'd certainly like to, because whether it's an academic camp or a fine arts camp or an athletics camp, I think it's important. Students and parents like that activity. So I hope we'll be able to bring those back, and we'll be posting more information about that soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next panelist Our next panelists we have two college presidents with us, Dr. Michael Mikota and Dr. Dwaun Warmack. Michael Mikota is from Spartanburg Community College, and Dr. Warmack is with Claflin University. And I want to just ask you a general question before you present your overall general remarks. And that question is this: what have your institutions been doing to maintain safety for your students, faculty, and staff? What protocols have been put in place, as well as what are you doing to maintain a high quality educational experience for students? So Dr. Mikota, do you want to go first?
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity to be with you tonight and excited about answering that question. Obviously, you know, last semester in the springtime, we were hit out of left field and we had to make a lot of pivots. And so in doing that, we had to work very diligently to put classes that wouldn't otherwise be online into that curriculum. A lot of work in order to do that. A lot of work on referencing metrics and making sure that the students were getting the necessary workloads in order to maintain and get through the end of the semester. Then during the summer, we worked very diligently on how could we bring back students on campus and faculty and staff working in a relationship to measure the CDC guidelines, as well as DHEC protocols, and limiting space by which we would be able to offer in-person courses, but at the same time, make sure that we had the proper social distancing, the proper mask wearing, the proper temperature checks, the proper manifestations of how we can continue to move forward. We've been focusing on three areas that I came up with in the summer, and they actually mimic our brand, SEC, safety, continuity, and communication. And focusing on the safety protocol is number one. So we want to make sure we have a safe environment. We put hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars into the cleaning processes, the wipe downs, the system management to make sure that we continue to progress in that hemisphere, the protocols, the actual HR processes for both staff and faculty to set up the arrangements so that we can have an operational environment that's safe and secure. But we've also been very transparent with the communications. We have set up the priorities so that we publish online on our website all of the cases that we have, both from a faculty standpoint and from a student standpoint. And to date, I'm very proud of how we've handled that. Now, obviously, you can't shut down a complete bubble. We don't have dormitories on our campus, but to date, we've had 75 faculty and staff that have tested positive and 175 students. So when you look at a 500 plus faculty and staff organization and about 6,000 students, those are pretty strong numbers and a testament to how we've continued to manage the protocols from a safe environment. And I have some numbers to share in my presentation with regards to how we're continuing to progress, but I am proud that right now we stand at about 45% of our students are taking face-to-face. Now we have a lot of students that are in hybrid and we have a lot of students that are online, but that's something that we're very proud of, and I can share some numbers with the group showcasing how that's led to the continuity piece. We don't want to let our students down. Ultimately, we want to make sure that they have the assets and the tools in order to be successful, and we're going to continue to do that.
Dr. Warmack.
Sure. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for allowing me to join the Upstate family, and so bring greetings to you from the Midlands. First off, I would like to say, you know, to answer your question, Claflin has been able to do remarkable work as it relates to the health and wellness of our students. You know, we are doing some things unique in a sense. We pivoted very fast as well, but our infrastructure was set. 6 years ago, my predecessor decided to move all of our summer school online. So we had already a fully online structure to pivot to. So only thing we had to adjust to was faculty pedagogy strategies and ensuring that they were able to deliver in this technological savvy student population. So that's where our adjustments came in. But health and safety was our top concern, you know, and so we brought back a quarter of our students. And we, as an HBCU, we felt we had a civic and a moral responsibility to focus on health and safety. As all of the indicators clearly show, African Americans are dying at a higher rate than any other race as it relates to COVID-19. So, and I had a very aging workforce. And so my workforce was an aging workforce. I had really at-risk population. So we took a lot of factors in play as we began to make our decisions. But I too, sort of as Michael, I'm excited to announce, we brought back a quarter of our student populations living on campus this past fall, and they lived on campus, and we tested every week, mandatory, faculty, staff, and students, and we had a 1.3% positivity rate. And so part of that is just our students followed the protocol extremely well. Our faculty were doing things that not put us in risk. So what we were able to do now was bring a third of our student population back this spring, scaled it up to be able to put our measurements in place. And just thus far already, sorry, our Friendly train is ran past. It's a train that comes back to campus every time I'm on a Zoom call. That we have brought back, like I said, a third of our population. We've been testing, we started back early on January 4th and started classes on 8th. And with students being back on campus, and we've had only 6 positive cases between faculty, staff, and students since January the 4th. And so we're been very fortunate, knock on wood. We've partnered with our local community to ensure that we are doing things to be good neighbors as well. As when you think of an influx, a small city like Orangeburg and South Carolina State and Claflin both bring back abundance of students, there's a lot of things that impacts the community. So we've been intentional about cultivating relationships with our local community, ensuring that the businesses and other entities are safe and secure as well.
Great, thank you. Thank you. A number of students and parents have suffered significant financial loss due to the pandemic. Some have been furloughed, some have lost their jobs altogether. Have you thought of any specific ways to address some of the financial challenges that students and parents are facing during this pandemic?
We have specifically, and I would like to say that, the populations, a lot of the populations that we serve in Spartanburg County, Cherokee County, and Union County, about 40% of our student body is non-white. And so when you're focusing on the Hispanic, Latino, African-American populations, we have a high service population that we support. And then a lot of that individuals that focus on not just the COVID environment, but the lost jobs, the application of not continuing on, the helping a family member. We had a student that is not only helping a family member currently, but had to drop out and go back to part-time. I think that's an important piece of what Spartanburg Community College brings to the table. Plus 55% of our student body is part-time. And so we've been able to see the gaps in funding at relatively small gaps, because our tuition is probably a third of a higher education tuition. We have a yearly tuition rate of about $5,000. So between Pell funding, between other resources at the state level, you can make that happen. But we've reached out prior to this second semester to a lot of our industries and companies and raised money to have the gap funding, so that individuals will be able to come back. And to this point in time, we've had over $100,000 in support mechanisms just from companies in Spartanburg, Cherokee, and Union counties to reach out to help those students in those gap areas. What that means is that although they may have had some kind of scholarship or some kind of tuition offset that we already have in place at Spartanburg Community College, they're needing help on the outside. One of the big factors that we've seen is childcare. Many individuals can't continue on with their degree programs because they have dependents. And when their dependents are at home and they're in virtual schools or they're not able to access, they have to have primary care. And so that's an impediment. Other things that we see are individuals, having to take care of loved ones or take on and be the primary breadwinners. And so when you have to put, bread on the table, that's going to be your first, opportunity. And so you're going to take the option of going to work, but we still try to look at how do we bring students back. And we have seen some successes. For instance, there's an individual that came back just this semester, and he was actually in the Navy. His name is Chandler Thomas, and he was in the Navy, and he was honorably discharged, and he came back out, and he's tackling the process of going back. He dropped out early on when he went to college right out of high school, and now he's picking up. So even during the challenges and the issues that we face with trying to support from a financial standpoint, we see individuals taking the opportunities. And I think providing the awareness of what some of those scholarship opportunities are, providing those awareness of what those resources are, throughout all of our communities in which we serve, to help those individuals get back in and stay on track. I think that's what we're continuing to decipher and make sure we bring in all of our partners in order to support that.
Dr. Warmack, do you have comments regarding that issue?
Sure. Yeah, that's that has always been our focus. Our tuition is about $26,000 a year. That's tuition, room and board, and fees. So it's a little more expensive. And if you compound that on 79% of our students are first generation college students, 68% are Pell eligible. So impact and financial impact plays a very significant role in there. And so when you think about gap, so our average student gap is roughly about $6,000. Once you get full Pell, sub, unsub, plus lottery money, there's about a $6,000 gap. So we've always had a pretty generous tuition discount model, which folks don't see in regards to the presidents and other folks in enrollment understand what that means. So we back in that piece of it. But we were very intentional early as well when this happened. I've shared numerous times and I've done multiple op-eds. I said often when tragedies happen or pandemics happen, you know, some institutions catch a cold, but our HBCUs catch COVID-19. And so, you know, we from historic underfunded, under-resourced for many, many years, you know, and so it becomes that. But I'm very fortunate our framework has been intentional in being student-centered, student-focused, and student-driven. And so with that, we've spent roughly about a little over $1 million in technology for students and PPE preparation. And so we've been able to do that. But most unique thing for me coming from a metropolitan area to South Carolina, then to rural South Carolina, when COVID hit, it blew my mind in the sense of the technology divide, right? And some of these rural communities that have no bandwidth, that have no ability for students to connect. So their disconnection when we had to go virtually was mind-blowing for me. And I'll share one story about a student, just about grit, perseverance, and commitment, and resource allocation. So I received an email in April of 2020 from a young lady. She said, Dr. Warmack, it is my prayer that Claflin's faculty and staff passion aligns with their compassion as we go through this global pandemic. She said, I drive 16 miles every Monday, Tuesday, and Thursday to the local McDonald's to sit in a parking lot to use their Wi-Fi because we have no bandwidth in my community. And so I immediately lost it. I called my team. I was like, how do we miss her? Send her a laptop, send her a hotspot. And so they told me they had already, right? But unfortunately, her community, because of no bandwidth, she couldn't connect anyway. And so what she said, she drove up there every day. And before we sent her the laptop, she was typing her research paper on her iPhone. And just was that committed to spend 4 hours in a McDonald's parking lot, you know, to be able to be there. And I'm excited to announce that young lady graduated with 3.9 GPAs on a full PhD ride in molecular biology to Yale, just because of that type of grit. So when I wrote her letter of recommendation, that's what I was able to share. That's the type of scholars that we come and produce at this institution through that sense of perseverance through that time. So.
That's a great story. We've got a couple more minutes left in this segment of our panel presentation. I want to just open it up for any comments that you want to share with our audience pertaining to adjustments that you've made to respond to the COVID-19, any innovations or things that you think that you'd like to share at this point. Got a couple of minutes.
Well, I'd like to say, you know, sometimes when you're faced with a tragic situation or a pandemic or any other situation in life, you have to be able to pivot. And I think we've learned a lot from how we implement and how do we adjust and how do we serve the purpose of student success. And in doing that, as been mentioned, we look at what we've done before and the trends that we've seen. And I think from an academic standpoint, we've shown that we've been able to implement and utilize not only technologies, but different ways to inference what the needs are of the students. So I think what we'll be able to do coming out of this is utilize alignments of resources beyond the aspects of just you know, Spartanburg Community College or a particular area. We can utilize resources in multiple phases across the board with higher education and really, quite frankly, K-12 education to make sure that we're having some kind of synergy in order to have the support mechanisms in place. And I think we've learned that. For instance, you know, Spartanburg Community College in the last 7 years had about 3,000 graduates that transfer. So we've had individuals go to Claflin, and our largest transfer area is Upstate, USC Upstate. But the students go to 44 states, 250 colleges and universities. So accessibility is so critical. And if we don't provide that accessibility to students on the front end and have that measurable increase with regards to FAFSA requirements, linkages, then I think that all that technology, all that capacity to teach, all those things are for naught if we don't have that awareness and that opportunity to synthesize the information to showcase what those opportunities and all those different pathways. That's not a right or wrong answer, but at the end of the day, we've made a lot of movements in the right direction from a pedagogy standpoint and from a technology standpoint. But if we don't actually have the perseverance to capture the great successes of students that are going to be motivated in order to achieve, then we need to make sure that we have that alignment. So I think that alignment is the key critical factor coming out of some of the momentum that we've made with regards to technology as well as pedagogy changes.
Okay.
So I'll just jump in really quick here and go fast. There was a slide, Dr. Booker, you put up there and regarding students and where they're going and matriculating and their college choices. And I noticed we were 23. Much as I love Michael Jordan, but 23 is pretty low on that list. And so I am here to advocate for, to get more students, not take away from any other school, but just as the ones that are going after college, really think about Claflin University. And I say that in the most sincere sense. When I arrived, I shared with the board, Claflin has been a best kept secret for too long. If you look at US News Report, we have been ranked for the past 15 years, top 10 HBCU in the country. So when you think about the best, and there's over 100 plus HBCUs, we've been in the top 10, 15 consecutive years. But the number I'm most impressed with, we're number 9 amongst all regional colleges in the South. And that puts us in a whole different framework when you're thinking about industry and things of that magnitude. And last but not least, I just want to share some just really brief statistics about HBCUs and the relevance and importance of it. HBCUs educate 50% of the African-American teachers in this country, 40% of African-American health professionals, and also 70% of African-American dentists or physicians have earned their degrees at HBCUs. And so when you think about 60% of HBCU students have study abroad opportunities. So I am really emphasizing the success that HBCUs have had ongoing. And then you have one of the crown jewels, we are the oldest and the first HBCU in the state of South Carolina, but we also have been the #1 ranked HBCU in the state of South Carolina. Highest graduation rate, highest retention rate, 40% alumni giving rate. This place is a jewel. And it's unfortunate that we get a lot of students from Washington, D.C., California, and we want to just stay in our own backyard and keep them here. When we think about talent and the benefit of making South Carolina a better place to live and to work, to keeping our talent, getting education, whether it's at Upstate, whether it's at Spartanburg Community College, wherever it is, but how do we keep our talent here in the state of South Carolina, which is so important. And so we're committed to that 175%. So folks who are interested in coming to see a crown jewel and witness the Claflin magic, come on to Orangeburg, South Carolina, and get a chance to see. And I'm doing personal tours, right? And so for a small group, you get to have a chance to see what's going on and hear a little bit about the Claflin magic. So thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We're going to transition down to our students who are here with us this evening, and I want to introduce them. We've got Mr. Nehemiah Chandler, who is he is actually a senior at USC Upstate, majoring in mass communications and minoring in criminal justice. And I think he'd like us to know that he's also a member of Alpha Phi Alpha. I see that behind him. And then we have Jessica Igollo-Ogele. Is that right? Ogele? She is a student at Dorman High School. She is also a college prospect. She is planning on going to either Wofford College or UNC College Hill in pre-med. She is a strong student and might give some consideration to maybe USC Upstate or Claflin University at this point. But I want to just ask a question to you all. I'd like you to talk about your observations as students in terms of what you think has been the most helpful for you by your institutions during this pandemic. What innovations, what responses that institutions have made have really been beneficial to you as students. And either of you can go first. And I think you're on mute.
Yeah, I can go ahead and answer that just from like a senior perspective. who's someone who's like kind of looking and had to like research and try to figure out where I want to go. I think one of the most helpful things that's not really, I guess, I think Miss Stewart, like earlier, she was talking about like how sometimes you don't really get a sense of the field just from like a lot of schools that I looked at were doing things where they pair us with a current student that like and called ambassadors or like student leaders at the school that I could talk to and ask questions to. And that has been like, I think one of the most helpful things to me, because it's not really, I get not always that admissions is trying to like sell a school, but it's really, I think, more of an authentic experience to hear from students that are attending the school. What do they like about the school? What do they wish they didn't know? I think it's kind of like how people will like watch a lot of those college YouTube videos. But I think for one of my schools, I was able to like have a Zoom meeting with the student that attended and ask all of these different questions that maybe I didn't feel comfortable asking admissions, or that wasn't answered for me in an informational session. So I think that that's one of those things that would be really nice.
Good, thank you. Nehemiah?
For me, I would definitely say the professors. At USC Upstate, I don't know what is in the water for the professors this semester and the past semester, but they are extremely helpful. They are extremely attentive to the emails. Whatever needs we ask for, the professors are there. They're so understanding. And I'm also in the military, so sometimes it's hard for me to make it to Zoom calls because I might be out in the field or something like that. And the professors are so helpful. And they're so welcoming, and they make it a known fact that they are here to help you, and they have no problem stepping out of their comfort zone to make sure that we're taken care of.
So what's been the most problematic adjustment that you all have had to make during this pandemic situation? These circumstances I know are very, very stressful, very, very challenging. What kinds of adjustments have you had to make been most difficult that you would share for other students and parents to understand?
I can go. For me, I'm an extremely hands-on learner. So being in the classroom and seeing the professor's lips move and interacting with the class, that's something that's huge for me, and that's been my the major adjustment that I've had to deal with is having to sit on my laptop and just watch the professor, and it's not really, I don't get a chance to interact. I'm taking a class, I'm taking geology, and that class is extremely hands-on. Normally we would go outside and we would do our labs outside, and I can't do that now. So it's kind of difficult to kind of adjust to that, because a lot of the students enjoy going to campus, whether they tell you or not. A lot of us enjoy walking on campus, getting the culture of being a college student, walking around campus. We love that. So it's kind of difficult to deal with that and to not be able to partake in certain activities and just interacting on campus.
Okay, thank you. And Jessica, are your classes hybrid classes? Are you going face to face every day? How's that working for you in high school?
Yeah, so I think District 6 and I think most of Spartanburg County is giving people the option to do either this software called Apex or go in person. And I think what has been, I guess, most problematic just from people I know that are online is some of the people who are like how he just said, hands-on learners. That's kind of problematic because they aren't able to learn. I know people who are like very bright, very smart. Their grades have taken a decline because the Apex software is not really up to like how they're used to learning. So I think that's been hard for a lot of people. And just because they're not allowed to make the choice by themselves, as well as they might have people at home that are high risk. So they understand why they have to be virtual, but it's really hard to kind of balance like the stress of applying to schools, and you had all of these good grades going into your senior year, but it's like now your grades are like going down and further down, and just kind of recognizing, just wanting to recognize how schools will react to those changes. Because I know a lot of schools have said, we're gonna be, I don't know what the word is, we're gonna like adjust with you, but not really giving us like a hands-on, this is what we're doing, like this is how this is gonna be looked at. Kind of like how, I think one slide said that test scores were optional but preferred. So they listed as optional, but it's still really preferred. So kind of like not really giving a blunt answer on how things are going to be, how they're going to be impacted on college admissions has been, I feel like, the most problematic.
read some literature recently where a number of college students and high school students, because of the nature of the classes, some of them being hybrid and some of them being almost entirely virtual classes, has caused a great deal of stress and depression among some students. Now, I had personal experience with some of that. My granddaughter, who is in middle school, she's an advanced placement student, but her grades began to suffer when she had to, the first semester, she did it all online. And we made a conscious decision to send her back to school because she really began to get depressed. And so I'm wondering, do you experience or see students who are having a difficult time just adjusting to the changes that have occurred due to the pandemic? Are you seeing students who are highly stressed or institutions reaching out to them to provide counseling services or some sort of intervention to help them along? What's your experience been?
I think a lot of students, especially in high school, a lot of the added stress, first and foremost, is from the virtual class, but a lot of high school students are using the time that they are virtual to work, either whether because they have to or whether because that's like a better option for them. So I think that's like another factor of this is a lot of people are working like these. I know people that are working almost full-time hours or like have to, or they want to now, or their employer sees that they have all this free time, which they really don't because they're in school. So I think that's another thing to consider. But I think a lot of the services, especially as a high schooler, I think in college is where a lot of people are like, oh, in college, I'll start going to see a therapist, or in like this college offers this. So I think colleges are really good about showing the resources that they offer for mental health, whereas in high school, there's still kind of a stigma around like, you don't want to go to the counselor, or you don't want to know, you won't want to go and like figure out what resources are there for you. But I think colleges should really just keep putting those out, especially to prospective students as well. And I know that's probably going to be really costly. And I know a lot of schools have talked about like how it's expensive to like have like therapists, staff, and stuff like that. But I think that that's such a good need. And also developing personal connections, just like I said, with the student ambassadors. If you put out these, I guess, therapists or like maybe even virtual sessions for students where they can like, I think one school I did, it was like a virtual fly-in, and they had like a meditation session or something that I could join. So I think that it's really important to show students what you offer. If you can't exactly show your campus, allow students to attend events that you're already doing for students that attend.
Okay, thank you. We, Nehemiah, didn't know if you had a comment. If not, we're going to turn to some open questions. Did I see you about to say something, Nehemiah?
Oh, no, sir. No, sir. I don't have a comment.
Okay. All right. Fine. Okay. At this point, I want to introduce Mr. Greg Stevens. He is our Vice President for Programs for the 100 Black Men of the Upstate. He was the immediate past president of the 100, and he retired as a key account manager for Michelin. He's going to preside over the question and answer period. And we certainly want to encourage those of you who have questions or comments to put those in the chat, and he will direct them to the various panelists. Greg Stevens.
Hey, good evening, everyone. Thanks again. And thanks to our panelists. It has been a very rich field discussion about academics and about schools and changes in light of the pandemic. One of the things we want to do is we do want to recognize Denny's Corporation as one of the sponsors who have been really instrumental in education. Matter of fact, one of their corporate initiatives is about hunger for education. And that's what we're feeling tonight, is we're feeling the hunger for information and knowledge about college and the impact from COVID-19. If you will, our guests are formulating their questions now, and we'll be submitting those going forward. But there are a couple of questions already on the table I'd like to address. Vice Chancellor Steward, you mentioned stress is one of the identified areas where students are having challenges, and it's higher than it's been ever before. Can you speak briefly to any student resource groups and processes that you're using in order to help the student?
Sure, thank you, and thank you for that question. And I think Jessica made some great points around that. And those are some of the things that we're trying to be sure that we first make sure that students know what the resources are, and that we do have counselors and other students and mentors who can jump in and help them, who can go into personal sessions with them, whether it's in person or online. So I think it's critical to understand those resources and to reach out for some help, because we know you can't do this alone. And so having people there ready to assist is just critical.
Very good. Thank you. Well, the next question surrounds technology. Dr. Warmack mentioned about some of the challenges in some of the rural areas, but I'd like to address this question to Dr. Mikota in the city. What are some of the challenges that you're facing technology-wise for students who are working as well as attending school in their success path?
Thank you for the question. We see a tremendous amount of students that not only have inaccessibility in certain parts of the county of Spartanburg County, Cherokee County, and Union County with regards to just the connectivity piece, but we also see students that are going through this phase where they may not even have access to a computer or linkage. I hear Dr. Warmack talking about the student typing the research paper on the phone. And in fact, we've had numerous students where we've plussed up the opportunities, whether it be through CARES Act funding or other funds that we have with our IT programs, to loan out computers and computer networks. And in all of our campuses, we have 5 campuses throughout our region, we have that extended Wi-Fi capacity. But it becomes very difficult. And we see a transition where individual students, drop off. And in fact, on the hybrid programs, as well as the online programs, we've seen a significant drop off. So between the fall semester and the spring semester, we've seen a drop off of about 40% of those individuals taking the hybrid and the online programs, just because of either the accessibility or the discussion with the students we're talking about is harder to connect in. Whereas we've seen only a drop off of about 10% for individuals that have been face to face. And so this whole new networking of access to technology, providing the resources, providing the computers, it also goes into part and parcel of how they deal with their families and what are the most important things on the table. So even if you provide some of those accessibility, when you're a part-time student, like I said, and you're having to work and you're having to study, and then you're having to go at night and check back in and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, those priorities get out of whack. And so even if you have the technologies, what we're seeing as the priorities of the individual students when it comes to having a job, having food on the table, having those pieces. So we have to surround all those patterns. And so even if we hand out 250 computers, to lease out or whatever we might do, the factor of it is that all of these other competing interests, because we're in a pandemic, because of all these struggles, causes difficulties even when you have the technology. So we have to surround those individuals with the opportunity and also even the offsets so that they can come back to school. So that's why I'm in favor of trying to set the offsets for individuals who are part-time to have some resources in order to get back, or having some rewards even to go back in and say, well, this is an acceptance piece where you go in beyond just the technology pieces.
Very, very good. Thank you. Dr. Warmack, you're not off the hook yet. You mentioned that you were very progressive in making sure technology was available by setting up platform and processes for the summer academic program. As an institution, what and how many of these programs will remain after the pandemic has ended?
Great question. Yeah, the summer just was the platform, our learning management system that we had there. But this COVID has forced us to reimagine higher education forever, right? Or education forever. So it would never go back to normal, right? And so we are reimagining our course design, we're reimagining our course schedule. And so the critical mass will always probably be hybrid courses, right? With some face-to-face, some asynchronous, some synchronous learning. So that is the platform that we've done. And so we also became the first official Zoom campus. We made that announcement back this fall. And we're the first campus Zoom has ever partnered with the United States. And so with that, every one of our classrooms, 250 classrooms, are now Zoom capability for asynchronous and synchronous learning. We've invested that technology in every single classroom. So even now, for a faculty member, I don't want to teach from home. You can come into the class and teach it from the class and get the same instructional format that is there. So we have forecast this will be how higher education will be for the next 20 to 25 years. And we've invested on the front end to ensure that we've increased our institutional bandwidth, we've increased all of our technology, ensure every classroom is ready to deliver that type of educational service.
Very good. Thank you. I appreciate that. We look forward to seeing and hearing more. And I'm sure you're collaborating with other HBCUs and institutions of higher learning to share those best practices.
Yes,
I'd
sir.
like to address this next question to Ms. Jessica Ogele. And the question is that congratulations, first of all, on your future career path. We need more doctors, and we look forward to just seeing your success going forward. But currently in high school, how or what do you feel as though you've been properly prepared for the academic rigor that you'll be faced in the next years to come?
Yeah, I think I can speak for like just Dorman High School, and because I know that schools have different profiles, and like Dorman might offer more APs than, let's say, Chesney High School. But I think Dorman High School, like with the whole college and career arts like readiness center, has been super helpful in preparing me and allowing me to take harder level classes. Like I've taken a dual enrollment class through Spartanburg Community College, which was really nice. And then just having all of those opportunities where like the professors can come on campus. I don't have to like figure out how I'm gonna get to campus. I don't have to figure out like how am I gonna pay for the class kind of thing. So I think that it's been really equitable. It's been not only just a great experience, it's been really equitable because people are actually able to do these things. Whereas I know in a lot of districts where they don't actually pay for this, they have to pay to take AP exams, they have to pay to take a dual enrollment class. And I think that district has made it really accessible for just different socioeconomic levels to have opportunities like this. I think it kind of goes on with the whole first generation students or like disadvantaged students were like less likely to have test scores during COVID. And I think that District 6 has really combated like a lot of the on their end, what they can do with allowing us to take college level classes while still in high school for free or little to no cost to us. So I think that my district has been really great about that. But I know that some other districts in Spartanburg County, there is still like a economic barrier.
Okay, thank you very much, and Dorman is doing a great job. Our follow-up question, we're just about out of time, but we do want to say that Mr. Chandler, thank you for your service, and thank you for the focus that you have on attending school while still serving your country. Can you tell us a little about some of the challenges that you have in balancing not just work life, but military life and the academic schedule that you have?
Thank you for the support. It's greatly appreciated. What can I say as far as the military standpoint and being a student? It can be difficult because there are a lot of times when I have to be gone for weeks at a time or maybe a couple of days, and I don't have full access to internet. And I have to like kind of readjust, but the professors are very understanding, and as long as I give them a documentation that I'll be gone and in some kind of way I'll be able to do the assignments in return, it's not that difficult because the professors are extremely helpful, and I believe Upstate is a yellow ribbon school already, and we already have a National Guard unit on our campus. So it's nothing new with the professors and with the campus. So it's not really that difficult at all, honestly, because we get the opportunities to turn the work in or some kind of alternative for us to do the work.
Very good. Well, we only have a minute or so left on the conference, but I'd like to start off by saying thanks to each one of our panelists for your valuable information and sharing about each of your institutions and higher learning. We'd like to thank our guest students for your contributions to our town hall meeting. I'd like to say that at the end, much of the information will be found on the website for the 100 Black Men of the Upstate.org. You'll find not only information from this session, but you'll find additional information on the white paper as well concerning education and some of the challenges and opportunities that we've identified that would be very beneficial. So with that said, we'd just like to thank each and every one of you for being here tonight. Thanks, and remember, because education is very important. Have a good evening. Goodbye.